Hey guys, tonight we slip back more than 60,000 years, deep into the chill of the Middle Stone Age. You crouch beneath a limestone overhang somewhere along the rugged coast of what is today South Africa. It is dusk, the air is raw and sharp, filled with the smoke of smoldering branches, and the salty tang of the sea drifts on the wind. The ground beneath your feet is hard-packed, stained in patches with a deep rust-red color. It isn't blood, it isn't just air, it's ochre, that iron-rich pigment that early humans believed could shield them from the invisible, the dangerous, and the unknown. Around you small knots of men and women shuffle toward the shelter, their shoulders weighed with baskets of shellfish, their arms balancing bundles of firewood. Children scurry ahead, their laughter briefly cutting through the low moan of the wind. Tonight's story is about the strange power of ochre, used as a charm against evil spirits, some 60 millennia before you were even a thought. You're not going to last long out here, by the way. A single infection from a cut, or a bad bite from a hyena lurking in the shadows, and your history. But the people you're following, they have ochre, and they think that means they've got a fighting chance. Before we get going, make sure you're settled. If this idea of humans smearing themselves red in the hope of fending off spirits feels just a little unnerving, well, that's the point. Comment your local time and location below. It's fun to imagine where in the world you're listening, while picturing the coastlines, caves and savannas of prehistory. And if you're curled up in bed right now, pull the covers close. Tonight, we're diving into the world of ochre, red dust, and survival. Alright, let's step into the rock shelter. The limestone walls glow faintly from the fire pits already lit, orange sparks climbing into the night. You see stains on the rock, faded smudges of red pigment that someone applied long ago. These are not paintings in the modern sense. They're not there to show off artistic skill or tell a story to strangers. They're closer to fingerprints, or protective wards, reminders that the world is full of things you cannot see, and that these pigments matter. The group arranges themselves inside. Women carrying infants settle on hides, while older hunters squat close to the fire, gnawing the last shreds from roasted bones. The red pigment smears onto their fingers as they touch the ground. For them it's as ordinary as you pulling out a phone charger, a tool, a habit, a necessary step to feel secure, and yet, to your modern eyes it is striking, this reliance on dust that stains everything it touches. You watch as an elder, lean, wiry, hair knotted with grease and ash, picks up a lump of ochre the size of a fist. He turns it in his hands as if it were alive, as if it carried some spark. He begins to scratch it against a flat rock, leaving trails of deep red dust. A child beside him coughs and sneezes at the iron tang. Then carefully, the elder dips his finger into the powder, and draws a streak across his forehead, another across the bridge of his nose. His skin glows with a red mask that seems to catch the firelight like fresh blood. You might laugh and say, so what, it's just dirt, but for them it is a barrier, an invisible wall between themselves and the spirits that make people sick, that steal breath in the night, that haunt the shadows beyond the firelight. Spirits explain why a hunter might stumble and never rise again, or why a child burns with fever and slips away. They cannot see germs, they cannot see parasites, but they can see ochre, and ochre once smeared, is obvious, visible, tangible, a promise to the group that they're not defenseless. The shelter tonight is full of life. The sea whispers in the background, hyenas laugh far away, and the smell of roasted shellfish mingles with the iron tang of ochre dust. Around you there's a rhythm to survival, baskets overturned to spill clams and limpets, stone tools clinking as they are sharpened, the crunch of marrow bones split with hammerstones. This is not a people on the brink of starvation. They are skilled, adaptive and inventive, and they gather in this place precisely because it has what they need: food, fire and the red soil scraped from nearby cliffs. The cliffs themselves are important. In daylight you would see streaks of iron oxide running down the stone faces, glowing red against pale rock. People hack at them with sharp cobbles, prying loose nodules of pigment. Sometimes they travel miles inland to find better sources, crossing ridges and rivers, just for a lump of red stone. That effort tells you something. They didn't only want food, they wanted this pigment so badly that they risked days of travel to secure it. Inside the shelter, people smear the powder on their bodies. Hunters coat their arms and chests before heading out into the bush. Mothers dab it onto their children's cheeks. Some mark their thighs, their bellies, their hands. Patterns vary, dots, streaks, swirls, but the meaning remains consistent. This is protection, not armor of leather or stone, but of belief. The fire pops, shadows dance. You hear a low hum, a song barely above a whisper. The elder taps two bones together, keeping a beat, while women sway in rhythm. It's a lullaby, a charm, a shield woven out of sound and pigment. You lean back against the cold limestone, watching sparks rise into the blackness. You realize something as you watch. This ochre doesn't just stain skin, it stains time itself. Archaeologists tens of thousands of years later will find these traces, the streaks ground into stone tools, the dust pressed into the pores of ancient hearths. They will see in these smudges the first signs of symbolic behavior, the idea that a color, a substance, could mean something beyond its material self. And you, sitting in the firelit cave of 60,000 years ago, are watching it unfold. People treating pigment as if it is alive, as if it is armor, as if it is the only thing standing between them and a world of unseen terrors. So tonight you walk into that shelter and sit beside the fire. You let the dust cling to your fingers. You hear the chants, see the flicker of red on human skin. This is the beginning of the story of ochre, a charm against evil spirits in a world where survival is never guaranteed. At first light, the cave is hushed. The fire has burned low, leaving only a faint glow among the ashes. You blink awake, hearing the scrape of stone on stone, as one of the hunters sharpens a blade. The air is cold and damp, clinging to your lungs. Outside, the pale sky brightens, revealing a world that is harsh and unpredictable. For the people here, 60,000 years ago, each day is a gamble, a fight against hunger, predators, and the invisible dangers they believe stalk them in the dark. You shuffle out of the shelter and onto the rocky slope. The first task of the morning is water, always water. Two women carrying woven containers made from plant fibers move carefully down a path toward a freshwater seep, not far from the sea. You follow, your feet slipping on the dew-slick rocks. The air smells of salt and wet earth, and you can hear the distant cry of seabirds circling above. These women know the route well. Their eyes dart constantly, scanning for snakes coiled in the grass, or the shadow of a leopard moving silently between the bushes. When they reach the seep, they crouch low and dip their vessels into the slow trickle. The water is brownish, flavored with minerals, but it's enough to keep the group alive. One woman wipes a streak of red from her cheek, ochre mixed with fat from the night before. She presses her fingers into the damp soil, then absent-mindedly reapplies the pigment to her brow. Even while fetching water, even in the most ordinary tasks, the pigment travels with them. It is not an occasional ritual, it is daily life. Back at the shelter, hunters are already preparing. The men, and some of the women, check their stone-tipped spears, binding sharp flakes into wooden shafts with sinew and resin. They speak little. A gesture, a glance is enough to signal the day's plan. Today they will go after small antelope along the scrubby ridge inland. The larger game like eland or buffalo are too dangerous without numbers and luck, but small herds of springbok, those are manageable if they can drive them into a gully. Before they leave, they gather near the fire. One by one, they dip their fingers into the pouch of red dust ground the night before. They streak it across their arms, down their legs, and across their foreheads. Some add it to the shafts of their spears, rubbing it in as though to pass on protection to the tools themselves. The youngest hunter hesitates. His face is pale under the dirt, his breath sharp with nerves. An elder leans over, smearing a bold red line across his chest with a finger. The gesture says, "You're ready, you're safe, you are one of us." And then they go. You trail behind them into the scrubland. The ground is dry, cracked, covered in patches of thorn and low bushes. The sun beats down and the heat climbs fast. Dust clings to your skin. Each step crunches over stone, and every sound makes the group pause. Hyena tracks appear in the dirt. A few vultures spiral above, reminders that death is always close. The hunters move like shadows. They crouch low, signaling silently, eyes fixed on the ridge ahead, where a herd grazes. The animals twitch their ears, nervous but unaware. Slowly the group fans out, encircling them. Then, with a sudden shout, they surge forward, clapping stones, hurling spears. The herd bolts, rushing straight toward a narrow gully. Chaos erupts, dust clouds rise, spears fly. When it's done, one small antelope lies bleeding on the ground. The hunters cheer softly, grinning, but they waste no time. Two men slit the animal's throat with sharp flakes, draining its blood. Another scrapes the hide, and as if instinctively one of the hunters rubs a streak of the animal's blood into the ochre already smeared on his skin. Red on red, life layered on protection. They hoist the carcass with ropes of sinew and begin the trek back. Along the way, they stop to dig tubers from the earth, their hands coated with red and brown. They gather edible greens, roots and a few nuts cracked open with hammerstones. Everything is for survival, yet always, the pigment remains close, staining fingers, staining tools, staining even the roots pulled from the ground. Back at camp, the women have returned with water and baskets full of shellfish. Children smash open shells with stones, licking out the salty meat. The hunters drop the antelope, and immediately the group begins to work. Hide is stripped, bones are split for marrow, the smell of fresh blood mixes with smoke. This is a good day, food enough to last if guarded carefully. But nothing is guaranteed. As the carcass is roasted over fire, you notice a hush fall over the group. One of the children, no older than 5, is coughing hard, his face flushed. His mother strokes his hair, murmuring softly, but her eyes are wide with fear. Illness spreads quickly here. No one knows why some live and some die, but they know what might help. The healer is summoned, a woman with hair streaked white, her skin leathery and lined. She kneels beside the child, whispering. She dips her fingers into a pouch of ochre mixed with animal fat. Gently she smears it across the child's chest, tracing lines like ribs of fire. She hums, low and steady, as if calling something unseen to leave the boy's body. The others watch, silent, their own foreheads marked with streaks of red. You feel the weight of belief pressing on the group. To you, modern observer, this is symbolic. To them, it is medicine, protection, hope. Without it, despair would crush them. With it, they feel a shield between themselves and the chaos of nature. As evening falls, the group eats together. Grease shines on their fingers, bones crack between teeth, laughter rises again. Children chase each other, smearing red handprints onto the cave wall. Some of those handprints will remain for tens of thousands of years, waiting for archaeologists to discover them and wonder, was this art, or was this magic? The answer, sitting here with them, is both. Later, as the stars prick the sky, the hunters gather once more. They sit around the fire, sharpening spears, rubbing ochre into the wood. The elder chants, voice rough, speaking of spirits that stalk the land. He speaks of how ochre confuses them, blinds them, keeps them from clinging to the living. Each word is punctuated by the crackle of fire. The group nods, solemn. Fear is real, and ochre is their answer. By now your skin smells of smoke and iron dust. You taste salt and marrow on your tongue. You hear the soft breathing of children asleep, their cheeks still smeared red. Beyond the firelight, the land is vast, endless, dangerous. Yet here in this circle of stone and flame, people believe they have a shield, not of bronze or steel, not of walls or fortresses, but of dust dug from the earth and smeared across skin. This is life at 60,000 years ago, fetching water, cracking shells, chasing antelope, fearing sickness, and trusting in red pigment. Day after day, the rhythm repeats, and though predators and fevers may strike, the ochre gives them something no weapon can, the feeling that they are not helpless. And you, still perched among them, realize that in this simple dust lies one of humanity's earliest acts of imagination. To look at a lump of red stone and see safety, to grind it to powder and paint it onto flesh, believing it keeps evil at bay. This is not just survival, it is the beginning of belief itself. The next morning, the red light of dawn spills across the coast, washing the limestone cliffs in a glow that mirrors the ochre dust still clinging to your fingers. You hear the faint crash of waves in the distance and the low murmur of voices inside the shelter. Life begins early here. There are no roosters, no bells, no clocks. The rhythm is dictated by the sun, the tide, and the hunger gnawing in everyone's stomach. Inside, the people stir. A woman shakes out a hide blanket, dust rising as she folds it. The faint smell of smoke and grease clings to every surface. A child rolls over, rubbing his red-smeared face against his arm, leaving another faint streak. That pigment is everywhere now, on the floor, on the walls, in the fibers of clothing ground into stone. It is more than a color, it is a presence. As the fire is coaxed back to life, the daily chatter begins. Who will gather shellfish at low tide? Who will track game? Who will tend to the weak? And just as important, who will fetch more ochre from the cliff? Supplies are not endless. The red stones carried back from previous trips are slowly shrinking as they are ground down. Without them, people feel exposed, vulnerable, naked to the forces of the unseen. So before the sun has fully climbed, a group is already preparing to collect pigment. 2 men and a woman, strong and quick, take up baskets woven from reeds. They carry stone hammers, ready to pry the ochre from the cliff face. One boy, eager to prove himself, begs to go along. After some hesitation, The elder nods and smears a line of red down his cheek. The boy beams. This will be his initiation into a task older than memory. The journey is rough. You trail behind them as they leave the shelter and walk along the rocky shore. The tide is low, and seabirds shriek overhead, but the group pays them little mind. Their eyes are fixed inland, toward the outcropping where ochre veins slash across pale stone. The land is uneven, rocks, thorny scrub, loose soil. Every step is deliberate. Even so, the boy stumbles once, skinning his knee, blood beads bright against his skin, mingling almost perfectly with the red dust already there. He laughs nervously, but the woman quickly smears more ochre on the wound, muttering words under her breath. Protection, always protection. At last they reach the cliff. Up close, the ochre is stunning. Streaks of red, deep and rusty, carved by millennia of rain. They set down their baskets and pick up hammerstones. The sound begins. Sharp, rhythmic clinks echoing against the rock. Small chunks fall loose, collected quickly. The boy grins as he pries off a piece the size of his palm. He holds it up proudly, the stone catching the morning light. To him this is treasure. They work for hours, sweat slicking their skin, dust coats their hands, their faces, their hair. When the baskets are filled, they stop to drink from a leather pouch. Their throats roar from the mineral taste in the air. One of the men crushes a piece against the cliff, smearing his entire hand with red, then slaps it onto the rock, leaving a fresh handprint among dozens of older ones, a mark of presence, a mark of power, a reminder to anyone who comes after that this place is alive with meaning. The walk back is slower, the basket's heavy. The boy stumbles again, but this time, he doesn't complain. His arms strain, but he keeps his grip, determined to deliver his share. By the time they return to camp, the sun is high, and the rest of the group cheers softly. Children crowd around to see the red stones. The elder takes one lump and immediately begins to grind it against a flat slab, dust spilling like sand into a small hollowed bone. You sit with them as the grinding continues. The sound is steady, soothing. Red dust drifts into the air, coating everything with a fine sheen. The bone vessel is passed around, each person dipping a finger and marking themselves. Even infants get a dab on their foreheads. It's like sunscreen to you, but here it's a spiritual shield. Without it you'd feel exposed to every cough, every shadow, every unexplained sound in the night. Meanwhile, daily survival never pauses. A group of women and children head to the tide pools with sharp sticks, prying limpets from rocks and spearing small fish. The air is thick with salt and seaweed, the rocks slick beneath their feet. They laugh when a crab pinches a girl's finger, though the laughter hides nerves. A fall here could mean broken bones or drowning. Still, the ocean offers bounty, and the baskets soon fill with food. Back at camp, others gather roots and seeds. They dig with pointed sticks, prying tubers from the soil. The roots are fibrous, bitter, but filling when roasted. One man finds a patch of honeycomb, risking angry stings to bring back a sweet prize. Everyone crowds to taste the golden syrup, sticky fingers smeared with both honey and ochre. Even sweetness here is mixed with the iron tang of red dust. By afternoon, the camp is busy. Shells crack, meat roasts, the air is thick with smoke and grease. Children play, painting each other with crude designs, turning ochre into games as much as protection. Their laughter carries, but you notice how often the adults glance toward the horizon, scanning for predators, hyenas, lions, leopards, all real threats. The pigment may guard against spirits, but sharp teeth are another matter. As the sun dips lower, shadows lengthen, and the air cools. This is when the real ritual begins. The elder gathers everyone around the fire. A fresh batch of ochre has been ground, mixed with animal fat into a paste. He passes it around, and each person paints themselves. Some draw lines on their arms, others circles on their chests. The boy who went to the cliff is allowed to mark his own design for the first time, a shaky spiral across his chest. The others nod, approvingly. He is no longer just a child. He has entered the circle of those who fetch the red. The chanting begins, soft at first, then louder, voices weaving together. The sound rises and falls with the crackle of flames. Feet stamp on the earth, sending up dust. Hands slap thighs in rhythm. The smell of smoke, fat and iron fills your nose until it overwhelms every sense. This is not entertainment. This is shield building, a collective act to keep spirits at bay. You sit among them, body trembling with the beat. The ochre on your skin feels hot, alive. Sparks leap from the fire, and shadows dance like spirits themselves. You understand now, without this, fear would crush them. With it, they believe they stand strong. The night stretches long. Songs shift to whispers, then to silence. People curl into hides, children tucked close to mothers. The fire burns low again, casting faint red glows across the stone walls. In the darkness, you hear distant laughter, hyenas prowling. The group stirs uneasily, hands clutching weapons, but no panic rises. They are painted, they are protected, they trust in the dust. And so, another day ends, water fetched, food gathered, ochre mined and smeared, every act threaded with survival, every breath shadowed by spirits both real and imagined, and through it all, the red pigment is constant, binding them together, staining not only their skin but their very sense of existence. The morning haze lifts slowly, hanging like a veil over the cliffs and the endless stretch of sea. You blink against the glare as the fire in the shelter coughs back to life. Smoke rises lazily, curling toward the cave ceiling and darkening the ochre-stained walls. You realize how permanent those stains are, even with years of new fires, new rains and shifting winds. The pigment lingers like dried blood. It is almost as if the stone itself has absorbed the memory of the people who lived here before. Life, though, doesn't pause for reflection. The group is already in motion. One woman kneels by the hearth, grinding roots into a pulp with a flat stone. Another untangles sinew threads, ready to bind new spear tips. A boy splashes water from a goatskin onto his face, leaving rivulets through the red streaks painted there the night before. The pigments smudge but never truly disappear. It's as though once the ochre touches you, a layer of protection remains, stubborn against the world's attempts to wipe it away. The tasks of survival stretch out like clockwork. This day, the hunters plan a longer journey inland, toward the ridges where larger animals roam. It's dangerous, but the rewards are great. Marrow-rich bones, thick hides and fat to fuel both lamps and bellies. Preparation takes hours. Spears are inspected again and again. Sharp stone flakes tested with careful fingers. Nets woven from twisted plant fibers are checked for holes. And at the center of it all, the ochre is prepared. You watch as the elder crushes more pigment, his arms steady despite his age. He mixes it with grease saved from the last kill, stirring until it becomes a thick, paste-like substance. The hunters line up, each taking their share. Some smear it boldly across their faces like masks, others rub it down their arms in broad streaks. One paints a circle on his chest, a sun symbol meant to guard the heart. Another paints lines down her legs, believing the marks will keep her swift. Whether or not it works, the ritual itself steels them. It reminds each hunter that they are not walking alone. The spirits may linger in the bush, but the ochre confuses them, blinds them, keeps them away. Before leaving, the hunters gather with the rest of the group for a short ritual. A hum rises, low, steady, vibrating in the chest. The women clap rhythmically, and children stamp their feet in imitation. The sound builds, rolling through the stone shelter until it feels as if the very walls are joining in. Then silence. The hunters shoulder their spears, nod once, and vanish into the landscape. You follow, stepping over rocks and thorn scrub. The air warms quickly, buzzing with insects. The inland ridge looms, dotted with brush and tall grass that shivers in the breeze. Every sense sharpens, eyes scanning for movement, ears tuned to the slightest rustle. These people walk as though the earth itself might attack them, and in some ways it will. The ridge is home to predators just as much as prey. Hours pass. Sweat slicks the ochre paint, turning it into streaks of mud against the skin. Yet the hunters don't falter. They move in silence, stopping only to drink from a stream or check for tracks. At last, they find what they seek. A small group of eland grazing near the scrub, enormous, heavy-bodied. Their hides gleam in the sun. The hunters exchange glances. Taking one will be hard, but the reward would feed everyone for days. The plan forms quickly. 2 circle wide to the left, 2 to the right. The youngest remains behind, clutching a spear nervously. You crouch low with him, heart hammering. Then the signal comes, a bird call, shrill and sudden. The hunters spring forward, shouting, waving spears, clapping stones together. The eland spook, bolting straight toward the ambush. Spears fly, thudding into the dust. One strikes deep. The animal bellows, thrashing, and another spear finds its mark. Finally, with a great crash, the eland collapses. The silence afterward is deafening. The hunters approach slowly, wary of a last violent kick. When it's safe, they gather around, hands pressed to the carcass. Blood steams in the cool air. One hunter dips his fingers into the wound, then smears the blood across his ochre-painted face. The others follow, red upon red, layering protection with life. To them the act is more than gratitude, it's a transfer, strength of the animal absorbed into their bodies, its spirit mingled with theirs, shielded from harm. But the work has only begun. The carcass must be skinned, butchered, and carried back. They set to it with sharp flakes of stone, peeling hide, slicing meat, cracking bones for marrow. The smell is thick, metallic, filling your nostrils. Flies swarm almost instantly, but the hunters wave them off. Each piece is carefully prepared. Nothing is wasted. Even the bones too small to yield marrow will be burned later, ground into powder, and perhaps mixed with ochre itself. By the time they return to camp, the sun is sinking. The shelter fills with noise and smoke as the meat is roasted, fat sizzling, dripping into the flames. Children shriek with joy, chasing each other around the fire. The boy who stayed behind beams when given the first marrow-filled bone. The group eats until their bellies ache. Laughter rises, mingled with the crackle of fire. But again, the night is never safe. As darkness spreads, a chill runs through the group. Somewhere out beyond the firelight a scream echoes, high, shrill, cut short, perhaps a predator's kill. The hunters tense, gripping spears. Mothers clutch children closer. The elder stands, his ochre-streaked face stern in the firelight. He lifts a pouch of pigment, sprinkles dust into the flames. Sparks rise, glowing red. He chants softly, calling the spirits away, urging them to feast elsewhere. The group responds. They smear fresh pigment onto their skin, painting new marks even as the meat grease still shines on their lips. Protection renewed, a barrier restored. For them the night is a battlefield between the living and the unseen, and without ochre, they'd feel naked, vulnerable, lost. As you watch, you begin to sense how deeply ingrained this is. To these people, ochre is not an accessory, it's not decoration. It is woven into every act of survival, in hunting, in eating, in sleeping, in raising children. They cannot imagine facing the world without it, and so they cling to the dust, smearing it, grinding it, carrying it, leaving marks on the stone that will last long after they are gone. By the time you curl up on the edge of the fire's glow, eyelids heavy, the ochre on your own skin feels like a second hide. You don't believe in evil spirits, but as the wind howls outside, and the hyenas laugh in the dark, you're oddly grateful for the red streaks. Just in case. The next day dawns gray, heavy clouds pressing low over the sea. The cliffs glisten with dew, streaked with veins of red ochre that seem to glow even in the weak light. You step out of the shelter with the others, the cool wind biting at your skin, carrying with it the scent of salt and distant rain. The fire has been coaxed back to life, and thin tendrils of smoke drift upward, curling like ghostly arms. Already, the camp is stirring. 2 women squat near the hearth, grinding pigment against a flat slab, the red dust falling into a carved bone container. They hum as they work, not quite a song, more like a rhythm to keep the grinding steady. Their hands are stained permanently, the creases of their skin deep red. Even if they stopped using ochre tomorrow, the earth itself has marked them. Food preparation begins almost immediately. A man returns from the shore carrying a basket heavy with mussels and limpets pried from the rocks at low tide. Children crowd around him, pointing, eager. Their laughter breaks through the morning silence, but their faces are streaked as always with ochre, crooked lines across foreheads, dots on cheeks, swirls on chests. These aren't random doodles. Each mark holds weight, a pattern whispered from one generation to the next. Even the children know where the lines should go. The elder rises slowly, joints stiff with age, and approaches the fire. He lifts a pouch and sprinkles ochre into the flames, the sparks glowing red as they leap upward. Everyone falls briefly silent. This is no casual gesture, it's an offering, a way to strengthen the barrier between the camp and the invisible dangers that surround them. Illness, bad luck, hostile spirits, all are believed to be kept at bay by this simple act of dust and fire. You notice how thoroughly ochre has woven itself into every part of their day. Before eating, hands are rubbed with it. Before leaving the shelter, lines are repainted. Before sleep, foreheads are marked again. It is ritual, yes, but also habit, as natural to them as brushing your teeth. And like brushing your teeth, it carries with it both practical and symbolic meaning. It cleanses, it protects, it reassures. Today's main task, however, is not hunting. The group is focused on repair and preparation. After yesterday's successful eland hunt, they have meat enough for now, Instead, attention turns to tools, to shelters, to the little things that keep life possible. Men sit in a circle, flaking stone with bone hammers, striking again and again until sharp blades are formed. Chips of rock scatter across the ground, glittering briefly before fading into dust. Women strip sinew from leftover bones, twisting it into threads for binding. Children fetch water, carrying heavy containers awkwardly but proudly. And then, in the midst of all this practical labor, ochre appears again. One woman smears it along the edge of a new spear shaft, whispering as she does so. Another mixes it with plant resin, creating a sticky paste to bind stone to wood. A man rubs pigment across the back of his hand before flaking a blade, as though steadying his grip with the spirit of the earth. For you, it's superstition. For them, it is technology as much as magic. One cannot be separated from the other. As the day wears on, the air grows heavy, clouds thicken, and the first drops of rain spatter the stone outside. People hurry to bring hides and baskets under the shelter. The storm comes quickly, a torrent hammering the cliffs, wind howling through the cracks. Children huddle close, wide-eyed. Thunder booms, rattling the ground. For a moment, fear ripples through the group. The elder moves swiftly. He seizes a lump of ochre, grinds it against the stone until his hands are coated. He paints bold streaks on the walls of the cave, red marks glowing in the firelight. The others follow, pressing handprints onto the rock, painting lines and swirls, chanting under their breath. The storm outside rages, but inside they build a fortress of pigment. Each mark is a shield, a message to the spirits riding the wind. You cannot enter here. Hours pass, rain drums endlessly, leaking through cracks in the stone. The fire sputters but holds. People curl together, their red-painted bodies glowing like embers in the flickering light. They hum softly, rhythmically, as if to drown out the thunder. Children fall asleep against their mothers' sides, their faces streaked and shining. At last the storm begins to fade. The thunder rolls farther away. The rain softens to a whisper. People stir, exhausted but relieved. The walls are now covered with fresh red marks, symbols layered on symbols. You realize you are watching the birth of what later generations will call art. But to these people it is not art, it is armor. The next morning, the world outside is scrubbed clean. The air is sharp, the sea wild, the cliffs glistening. People step out cautiously, their feet sinking into the wet soil. Pools have formed where dry ground once lay. Tracks are everywhere. Antelope, hyena, even lion. The rain has washed away old trails, but revealed new ones. Hunters study them carefully, crouching low, their ochre-streaked faces close to the ground. They will not hunt today. The ground is too slick, too dangerous, but they take note, storing the knowledge for later. Instead, they gather plants loosened by the rain. Women dig tubers easily from the softened earth, their fingers red and muddy. Children splash in puddles, leaving handprints on stones as they play. Everywhere they go, the pigment spreads, staining the world with their presence. As the sun sets, the camp regathers. The storm is over, but its memory lingers. To them, the survival of the night is proof of ochre's power. Without it, they might believe the spirits would have swept them all away. With it, they feel shielded, protected, chosen. The elder speaks softly, telling a story of long ago, of a time when a family failed to paint themselves before a storm and were never seen again. The listeners nod gravely. Whether the story is true or not doesn't matter, it is truth enough. And you, sitting there with them, begin to feel it too. The pigment on your skin has dried into fine cracks, but still it clings. Still it smells faintly of iron and earth, and in the flicker of firelight, you realize it is not only spirits they keep away, it is despair, it is the terror of being small in a vast dangerous world. The ochre does not erase that terror, but it gives them the courage to face it. That night, as you curl against the stone wall, you close your eyes. The last thing you see before sleep is a wall covered in red handprints, glowing like embers, like countless ancestors reaching out to promise, you are not alone. Word count 2528. The sun breaks through thin morning mist, spilling gold over the rocky cliffs. A salty breeze sweeps inland, tugging at strands of hair, drying the ochre streaks still visible on everyone's faces. The storm has left its mark, gullies carved deeper by rushing water, branches strewn across the ground, fresh animal tracks pressed into soft earth. Life, however, doesn't pause. The shelter stirs with quiet urgency, the day's tasks falling naturally into rhythm, each person knowing without words what must be done. You watch as the group divides itself. Some head toward the shoreline to scavenge shellfish, shaken loose by the waves. Others drift inland, eyes sharp for game or edible roots. And then there are those who remain behind, tasked with tending the hearths, repairing hides, and most importantly preparing the red pigment that forms the backbone of every ritual and every comfort. This morning, the grinding is deliberate, unhurried, almost meditative. A woman sits cross-legged near the fire, a flat slab balanced on her knees. In her hand, she holds a lump of ochre, its surface worn smooth by repeated use. With steady pressure, she rubs it against the slab, turning it into a fine powder. Each scrape is slow, consistent, releasing the metallic tang of iron into the air. A child leans close, watching intently, trying to imitate the motion with a smaller piece. His streaks are uneven, the dust clumping in ridges, but the woman smiles and lets him continue. This is how knowledge is passed on, not in lectures or lists, but in the simple act of doing. Once the powder is ready, another woman mixes it with animal fat stored from yesterday's kill. She uses a bone spoon to stir, the paste thickening until it resembles wet clay. This mixture will cling longer to the skin than dust alone. She dips her finger in and drags a line across her cheek, then hands the container to the child, who smears it clumsily over his arms, laughing at the sensation. The red paste stains not just his skin but his pride. He is part of the group, shielded like the rest. As the morning unfolds, daily survival takes on a rhythm almost musical. You hear the crack of stone against stone as hunters sharpen blades. You hear the splinter of shells pried open, the sucking sound of limpets pulled free, the giggles of children chasing each other with hands stained red. The ochre is everywhere, in the creases of tools, on the hides stretched to dry, smeared across the bodies of nearly everyone present. It is as if the pigment itself is a member of the group, constant, essential, irreplaceable. By midday, the hunters return with little more than a rabbit-sized hyrax, and some birds caught with snares. It's not enough to fill everyone's belly, but it will add flavor to the day's meal of shellfish and roasted roots. Yet even as the food is prepared, you see ochre woven into the process. One man smears pigment onto the roasting spit, believing it will prevent spirits from stealing the meat's essence. Another paints a circle on the ground near the hearth, marking the cooking area as safe. To modern eyes, these might seem like superstition, but to the people here they are part of the same toolkit as the spears, nets, and baskets. Protection comes not only from physical tools but from symbolic ones. The meal is shared quickly, eaten with greasy fingers. Children lick shells clean, women crack bones for marrow, hunters chew tough strips of meat. All the while, pigment streaks their hands and faces. Food and ochre, sustenance for body and spirit. But survival is not only about eating. After the meal, attention shifts to what you might call ceremony. The elder calls the group together, his ochre-smeared face stern yet calm. He gestures toward the cave wall, already covered in handprints and streaks from the night of the storm. Slowly he takes a fresh lump of pigment, crushes it against the stone, and begins to draw lines, curves, intersecting shapes, not pictures of animals or people, but abstract marks, symbols whose meaning lives only in the minds of those watching. The group hums softly, a chant that rises and falls like waves. Children press their hands to the wall, leaving prints among the lines. Each mark adds to the fortress, a visible reminder that they are shielded from what lurks unseen. You realize something important here. These marks are not random. They are memory. They are identity. Each handprint says, I was here, I belong, I am part of this. Each line strengthens the invisible wall between the group and the chaos beyond the firelight. The ochre is more than pigment. It is a contract, a declaration that life is worth defending. As evening comes, hunters prepare again. They plan to track antelope near the inland grasslands, risking the dangers of predators and open terrain. Before leaving, they paint themselves thoroughly. Thick lines cross their torsos, spirals cover their arms, dots cluster around their eyes. Each design is believed to serve a purpose: speed, stealth, protection, luck. The painting is done with solemn concentration. Jokes are few, laughter rare. Everyone knows the stakes. You follow them across the scrubland, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. The ochre glows faintly in the fading light, giving the hunters an almost otherworldly appearance. They move silently, scanning the terrain. Hours pass before they find a herd of springbok grazing cautiously. The hunters crouch low, hearts pounding. At a signal they rush forward, shouting, waving spears, driving the animals into confusion. Dust rises, spears fly, bodies crash. The hunt is chaotic, dangerous. One hunter stumbles, nearly gored by sharp horns. Another leaps onto a struggling animal, plunging his spear deep. blood sprays, steaming in the cool air. At last, one springbok falls, twitching, then still. The hunters gather, panting, faces streaked with sweat and red pigment. Immediately, they press their hands into the animal's blood, smearing it over the ochre already painted on their skin. Blood and earth together, life and spirit fuse. The carcass is butchered quickly, the meat divided, the hide stripped. The hunters sing softly as they work, a chant of thanks and protection. By the time they return to camp, darkness is closing in. The group welcomes them with cheers, children running forward to touch the red-smeared hands of their elders. The fire blazes, meat roasts, laughter fills the air. For tonight hunger will not gnaw so fiercely. But as always, the night carries dangers. Hyenas howl in the distance, their laughter chilling. The elder sprinkles ochre into the flames again, the sparks glowing like tiny suns. The group paints fresh lines on their faces, even as grease from the meal drips down their chins. They chant, hum, whisper, pressing handprints on the walls, until the stone glows with a forest of red marks. You lie back against the cave wall, eyes heavy. The pigment on your skin feels gritty, cracked, but somehow comforting. The fire crackles, the chants fade into murmurs, and beyond the shelter, the world is vast, dark and hungry. Yet here in this circle of stone and pigment, you feel almost safe. The dawn creeps slowly, pale and hesitant, as if the sun itself is reluctant to rise over this rugged world. You awaken to the sound of coughing, low and harsh, echoing through the shelter. One of the older women is bent double, her chest rattling with each breath. Around her, anxious faces gather, hands already reaching for the red paste stored in a bone vessel. Even sickness is met first with ochre. The healer comes forward, the same white-haired woman who soothed the fevered child days earlier. She kneels beside the sick woman, dipping her fingers into the red mixture and smearing thick lines across the chest, as if painting armor directly onto the ribs. Her voice rises in a rhythmic chant, soft at first, then louder, filling the cave. Children hush, their eyes wide. The sick woman leans back, her breath still ragged but slower, steadier, as if the ritual itself is coaxing her body into calm. You realize how fragile life is here. Every cough, every fever, every small wound could mean death. Without medicine as you know it, they turn to what they have: belief, ritual, pigment, and whether or not it truly cures, it provides something essential: hope, a reason to fight. When the ritual ends, the elder sprinkles more ochre into the fire. Sparks flare glowing red before fading into smoke. The group exhales as one, as if reassured. They cannot see germs, but they can see color. They cannot fight illness directly, but they can smear lines that feel like shields. That is enough. The day's tasks begin again, though with a subdued air. The hunters will not leave today. The storm's slick ground and the presence of sickness make it unwise. Instead, the focus turns to maintenance. Spears must be repaired, hides softened, shelters reinforced. You watch as a young man kneels over a broken spear, its stone tip shattered in the last hunt. He sharpens a new flake, hands steady despite the risk of cutting himself. Beside him, another man mixes resin with ochre, binding the stone securely to the wooden shaft. The red paste seeps into every crevice, staining the tool permanently. When he lifts it, gleaming in the firelight, it seems almost alive, as if the pigment has granted it a spirit of its own. Nearby, women stretch hides, scraping them with sharpened bones until they soften into pliable sheets. Children are given small tasks: fetching water, carrying sticks, grinding pigment with clumsy determination. The air hums with industry. Each sound, scrape of stone, crack of wood, hum of voices, weaves into a rhythm of survival. By midday, the sky clears, and the sea sparkles again. A group heads to the shore to gather shellfish and seaweed. You trail along, feeling the sharp rocks beneath your feet, the spray of salt water on your face. The tide pools are alive with limpets, mussels and crabs. Children squeal with delight, prying shells with sharpened sticks. One girl smears a crab with ochre before smashing it against a rock, giggling as if she has tricked the spirits that might have claimed her prize. Even in play the pigment intrudes, or perhaps it never leaves. Back at camp the food is cooked quickly, roasted over open flames. The smell is briny, smoky, filling the air. People eat with greasy fingers, the red paint smearing further across their faces. You notice how every act, hunting, cooking, eating, becomes inseparable from ochre. It is not reserved for ritual alone. It is in the marrow of their lives, a thread binding every task. As evening approaches, the elder gathers everyone for another ritual. This time it is not for sickness or storms but for protection. He leads them to the wall at the back of the cave, where older handprints fade into stone. Slowly, each person places their hand against the wall, dusting it with fresh pigment. One by one the prints layer, some small, some large, overlapping in a chaotic tapestry. The effect is powerful. The wall glows with dozens of red hands, a chorus of presence. Each print is a voice. I am here, I was here, I belong. The children press their hands eagerly, leaving small marks among the larger ones. You press yours too, and for a moment you feel connected to them. Across time, across everything, your handprint joins theirs, a fleeting gesture in the deep history of humanity. The chants begin, low hums, rising and falling. The firelight flickers, illuminating faces, streaked red, eyes shining, feet stamp, hands clap, voices merge into a single sound that fills the shelter. It is not just ritual, it is unity, a way to remind each person that they are not alone, that together they form a shield as strong as the ochre they smear across their bodies. The night deepens, outside predators roam, you hear the cough of a leopard, the distant laughter of hyenas. The group huddles close, their chants softening into murmurs, then silence. The fire burns low, glowing red, like the pigment itself. Children sleep against their mothers, hunters rest with spears beside them, and the sick woman breathes steadily, her chest still painted with thick red lines. You lie back against the stone, your own hand still faintly stained. The ochre cracks against your skin, gritty and dry, but it feels like more than dust. It feels like belonging, like armor, like the memory of countless hands pressing into stone across millennia. The spirits may linger in the dark, but here in this circle of red and flame, you almost believe they cannot touch you. The dawn comes cold and sharp, with mist rolling inland from the sea like a pale, shifting wall. The fire in the shelter still smolders, sending thin curls of smoke up to the soot-darkened roof. The ochre stains on the stone are more visible than ever in this dim morning light, glowing like embers embedded in the rock. You stretch your stiff limbs, realizing again how this pigment clings not only to walls but to every rhythm of their lives. The camp stirs gradually. A mother cradles her infant, tracing a thin ochre line down the baby's tiny forehead. A boy rubs at yesterday's dried streaks, flaking them off, then quickly reapplies fresh paste from a communal bowl. Two hunters test the edges of their blades, making sure the stone hasn't dulled overnight. The elder sits near the fire, humming low, his hands already red from grinding a new batch of pigment. It is never left undone. Each day begins with the dust of the earth, as necessary as water or food. Today, however, there is tension. Whispers ripple through the group. Stories of spirits, sighted in the night, of shadows moving where no animal should be. Perhaps it was only the call of a hyena or the brush of wind through the scrub. Yet for them, these are not merely noises of nature. They are signs that malevolent forces are nearby, and so more pigment is prepared, more hands are marked, more chants are murmured as the sun struggles to rise. You follow as the hunters prepare for a journey inland. Food is running low. Yesterday's catches were meager. The springbok herds must be tracked again, even if danger lurks in every hollow. Before setting out, the group gathers in a semicircle. One by one the hunters kneel before the elder, who paints broad red spirals across their chests. Each spiral encircles the heart, a symbol meant to confuse spirits that would otherwise strike there. The hunters accept the marks without hesitation, gripping their spears more firmly as if the pigment adds weight and courage to the wood. The trek inland is slow and deliberate. The ground is soft from earlier storms, tracks pressed deep into the soil. You see the prints of antelope, yes, but also lions, fresh, heavy, unmistakable. The hunters pause often, crouching to study each mark. They speak in whispers, their eyes darting to the brush. Every movement, every sound, carries weight. The ochre streaks on their bodies seem to pulse in the morning light, reminders of protection even as danger presses closer. Hours pass before they spot the herd. Dozens of antelope graze in a clearing, their ears twitching, tails flicking against flies. The hunters exchange glances, their breath quickening. They spread out, circling silently. The signal comes, a high bird call, sharp and sudden. Then chaos erupts. Shouts split the air, spears whistle, dust clouds rise as the herd bolts in panic. Hunters give chase, their ochre-smeared limbs flashing as they surge forward. One spear finds its mark, sinking deep into an animal's flank. Another grazes a leg. The herd scatters, and for a moment it seems all may be lost, until one antelope stumbles, collapsing in the dirt. The hunters descend, swift and precise, finishing the kill with practiced strikes. The body is heavy, the air thick with the smell of blood. Almost immediately one hunter dips his fingers into the wound, mixing blood with the ochre already on his skin. He paints new lines across his arms, whispering words of thanks and protection. The others follow suit, red on red, earth and life joined together. It is not enough to kill, they must also bind themselves to the spirit of the animal, ensuring it does not follow them back in anger. But victory carries risk. As they begin to butcher the carcass, a distant roar ripples through the brush. A lion. Close, too close. Panic flickers across their faces, but they act swiftly. Two hunters smear ochre onto nearby stones, painting crude symbols as warnings, barriers against what stalks them. The others haul the meat quickly, wrapping it in hides. They cannot stay long. Every second in the open is a gamble. The journey back is hurried, tense, eyes scan constantly, spears are gripped tightly. The ochre on their bodies feels less like ritual now and more like desperation, a shield they cling to against the very real threat of claws and teeth. The group does not relax until the cliffs come into sight, the sound of waves breaking once more in their ears. At the shelter, relief floods the camp. Children cheer, women hurry forward to help with the meat. The hunters collapse near the fire, their ochre streaks darkened with sweat and dust. The carcass is roasted in parts, smoked in strips, divided among families. The smell of sizzling fat fills the air, and laughter rises again, yet the ochre is never absent. Before eating, the elder marks the meat itself with pigment, ensuring that the spirits cannot sour it. Only then do the people feast, greasy fingers leaving red streaks across their mouths and chests. As night falls, the group regathers for ritual. The elder leads them in chants, his voice carrying over the crackle of flames. He lifts a lump of ochre, grinding it slowly, deliberately, into powder. He casts it into the fire, and sparks leap high, glowing like stars. The people hum, sway, stamp their feet. Shadows dance across the walls, joining the red handprints pressed there days before. And then something remarkable happens. A young woman steps forward, carrying her infant. She dips her hand into the pigment paste, then presses it gently onto the baby's chest. The child giggles, squirming, but the mark remains, a red spiral over the heart, mirroring those painted on the hunters. The group murmurs approval. Protection begins at birth, passed on like language, like memory. The chants grow louder, the fire blazing. You feel the heat, smell the iron tang, see the ochre glowing on every face. In this moment, you understand, the pigment is not just about spirits or sickness, it is about belonging, about binding each person into something greater than themselves. It is the glue that holds them, the armor that unites them, the language they speak without words. As the night deepens, the group finally rests. The fire burns low, the ochre on their bodies cracked, but still present. Outside, the predators prowl, the wind howls, the spirits, whether real or imagined, circle unseen. Yet inside the shelter, the people sleep with red on their skin, convinced that no harm can breach the wall they have painted around themselves. And you, lying against the cold stone, realize something extraordinary. This dust, this simple earth, has become the first talisman of humanity, a charm against darkness, a symbol of survival, a whisper of belief that stretches forward through tens of thousands of years and still clings to you now. The fire sputters and crackles as dawn presses pale light into the cave mouth. You blink against the morning chill, noticing that the ochre on your skin has cracked into thin scales like dried riverbeds. It flakes onto your clothes, onto the stone beneath you, into the very air you breathe. Around you, the people stir, slow, weary, but purposeful. Every day begins this way, not with leisure, not with planning for tomorrow, but with the immediate tasks of surviving today. The elder sits near the fire, already grinding a fresh batch of pigment. His hands are steady, his movements patient, as though he has done this thousands of times before. Perhaps he has. The ochre dust falls into a carved shell, mixing with traces of fat left from last night's meal. He hums softly while he works, his voice like gravel, carrying into every corner of the shelter. It isn't for entertainment, it is for reassurance, a reminder that as long as the red dust exists, the group will endure. This morning is heavier than most. Whispers ripple through the camp about spirits that have returned. A child woke screaming in the night, pointing to the shadows on the wall, insisting something had brushed his face. His mother smeared more pigment on his forehead, soothed him back to sleep, but the fear lingers, even now, as the child clings to her side. the others glance uneasily at the cave mouth. To them, the unseen is never far away. The group decides on a ceremony before leaving to hunt or gather. It begins with silence. The fire is coaxed higher, flames licking the blackened ceiling. The elder dips both hands into the ochre paste, then raises them high, palms glowing red in the flickering light. He presses them firmly to the wall, leaving fresh prints layered atop older ones. One by one the others follow. Some smear their entire arms, some only fingertips. The wall becomes a canvas of presence, a barrier, a message, a shield. The spirits, if they are watching, are told clearly, these people are not undefended. When the last handprint is pressed, the group exhales in unison. The hunters gather their spears, the women prepare baskets, and the children clutch smaller tools made for play but treated as real. Even the sick woman, still coughing but stronger, dips her fingers in the pigment and marks her chest again. She will not walk far, but she will walk with protection. You follow a hunting party inland, away from the sea breeze, and into the dry scrub. The ochre streaks on their bodies glow faintly in the morning sun, transforming them into moving flames. Their steps are careful, deliberate, pressing softly into the damp earth. Every so often they crouch to study tracks. Antelope, hyrax, even lion, danger and sustenance share the same paths. They walk for hours before spotting a herd of kudu, grazing along a slope. The animals are larger than springbok, with spiraled horns that gleam in the light. The hunters freeze, breath shallow. Slowly they fan out, forming a half circle. One man smears a fresh line of pigment across his forehead, muttering words that only he can hear. Then at a signal, the attack begins. Shouts rise, spears arc through the air. The kudu scatter, hooves thundering against stone. Dust clouds rise, obscuring everything. One animal bolts straight toward the trap, a spear lodging deep in its side. Another is struck but manages to escape, bleeding as it disappears into the bush. The hunters haste, swift and relentless, their ochre-streaked limbs glistening with sweat. At last the wounded kudu collapses, sides heaving, eyes rolling. The hunters surround it, finishing the kill quickly. Blood steams in the cool air, a metallic scent mixing with the iron tang of pigment. Without hesitation, the hunters smear blood onto their already painted faces, whispering thanks and demands for protection. One man presses a handprint, red with both ochre and blood, onto the animal's flank. It is a seal, a ritual binding. The spirit of the kudu now belongs to them. The butchering begins immediately. Stone blades slice, hide, cut muscle, crack bone. Fat is set aside carefully, to be mixed later with more pigment. Nothing is wasted. Tendons for cordage, bones for tools, stomach lining for containers. As they work, the hunters hum softly, a rhythm to steady hands and hearts. You can see how the act of killing is never purely practical. It is always ritual, always symbolic, always tied to the ochre that stains every surface. The trek back is grueling, the carcass is heavy, the sun fierce. Sweat mixes with pigment, turning it to mud on their skin, yet no one complains. They walk with pride, carrying not just meat but the evidence of survival. When the cliffs come into view again, the group exhales with relief. Children rush forward to greet them, touching the blood and ochre streaks as if they carry power. Back at camp, the kudu is roasted, smoked, divided. The smell of fat sizzling fills the air, drawing laughter, chatter, joy. For a moment, the dangers of the hunt fade into celebration. Children chase each other around the fire, faces smeared with grease and pigment. Women tear strips of meat, their hands glistening red. Men drink marrow from cracked bones, streaking their chests with it like paint. Yet even in joy, fear lingers. That night, the hyenas laugh closer than before, their voices echoing like cruel jokes. The people stiffen, gripping spears, pulling children closer. The elder responds swiftly. He sprinkles ochre into the fire until the flames burn red, then chants louder than the hyenas' cries. Others join, their voices weaving into a wall of sound. The predators prowl, but they do not come closer. Whether deterred by fire or fear, the camp remains safe. Later, as the group rests, the elder tells a story. He speaks of ancestors long ago who lived without pigment, who were taken by spirits in the night. His voice is rough, his words heavy. The listeners nod gravely, their faces glowing red in the firelight. The story is not just history, it is instruction. Always use the pigment, always mark yourselves. Without it you are nothing but prey. You lie back, staring at the cave ceiling, blackened by smoke and streaked with ochre handprints. The pigment is everywhere, on walls, on tools, on skin, in stories, in rituals. It is the first language, the first armor, the first art. And as you drift towards sleep, you realize, these people do not merely survive with ochre, they survive because of it. The night fades slowly, the embers in the hearth glowing faintly like red eyes in the dark. You stir awake to the soft rhythm of grinding, that familiar scrape of stone against stone, the first sound of every morning. A young girl sits near the fire, her tiny hands clumsy but determined as she rubs a lump of ochre against a slab. She hums to herself, mimicking the songs of the elders, though her tune drifts in and out. The dust she creates is uneven, clumped, but no one scolds her. Every smear, every grain is practice in becoming part of the world. The group rises slowly, stretching against the chill. Mist hangs over the cliffs, dampening hair and hides. Smoke lingers, sharp in your nose, and mingles with the metallic tang of pigment. As light creeps in, you see how thoroughly everything is marked. Baskets stained red from handling, spears streaked from fingers, even the cave floor mottled with patches of dust that will never wash away. This is not simply a tool, it is their fingerprint on the world. But the mood today is tense. One of the hunters returned late in the night with scratches across his arm, blood still seeping. He whispers that a spirit attacked him near the ridge, a shadow that lunged, claws raking his flesh. You might say it was a leopard, silent and swift, but the others nod grimly. The spirits are restless, protection must be renewed. The healer moves to the injured man, her hands already red with paste. She presses thick pigment into his wounds, muttering words that rise and fall like waves. She ties a strip of hide around his arm, streaking it with more ochre. The man breathes more easily, though his pain is evident. Around him, the others murmur approval. Without the pigment, the wound would surely fester. With it, there is hope. The elder decides that the entire group must perform a protection rite before the day continues. He calls them to the back wall of the cave. Fresh pigment is prepared, mixed with marrow fat until it gleams dark red. One by one they dip their fingers and draw new marks over the fading ones. Spirals, lines, circles, dots. Each pattern carries meaning older than memory. The wall glows, layered with generations of touch. Children press their hands eagerly, laughing as the dust clings. Mothers press infants' tiny palms against the wall, leaving faint prints beside their own. The hunters smear bold streaks across their foreheads, down their arms, across their chests. The act is solemn yet joyful, binding them together in the face of unseen dangers. When the rite ends, silence lingers. The fire crackles, the smell of pigment and fat heavy in the air. You realize how profound this is. They are not merely painting, they are building a fortress of belief, a shield of symbols. Even if their bodies are fragile, their spirits are armored. By midday, the group disperses into tasks. Women head toward the tide pools with baskets, their feet slipping on wet rocks as they pry mussels free. Children dig for tubers in soft soil, laughing when worms wriggle up. Hunters set snares, check tracks, mend broken spears. Every task carries pigment with it. A woman smears ochre on her basket before lowering it into the tide, ensuring spirits will not steal the catch. A child paints lines on his stick, declaring it will dig deeper. A hunter rubs pigment on his spear shaft, whispering for strength. Later the hunters track a herd of springbok grazing on a ridge. The ochre streaks on their faces make them appear otherworldly, half shadow, half flame. They move silently, crouching low, hearts pounding. At a signal they erupt from the brush, shouts and clattering stones driving the herd into chaos. Spears fly, dust billows. One springbok falls, struck deep. The hunters cheer quietly, relief flooding their faces. The kill is quick, the butchering practiced. Blood steams in the sun, smeared onto ochre-marked skin. They work swiftly, cutting meat, cracking bones, stripping hide. Every motion is accompanied by murmured chants, words of thanks, words of warning. The spirit of the springbok must not follow them. Its strength must be absorbed, its anger soothed. The ochre makes this possible. Without it the kill would be dangerous, cursed. With it, it becomes bounty. They return with meat, greeted by cheers from the camp. The smell of roasting flesh soon fills the air, mingling with smoke and pigment. Children dance around the fire, their faces painted like masks. Women tear strips of meat, their hands greasy and red. Hunters drink marrow, streaking their bodies with it until they shine in the firelight. But the night brings unease. The laughter of hyenas rings close, circling like invisible predators. The group stiffens, fear spreading. The elder rises, his ochre-streaked face glowing in the flames. He sprinkles dust into the fire, sparks leaping high. His chant begins low, then builds, others joining until the shelter hums with sound. The ochre on their bodies glows in firelight, turning them into living embers. The predators do not approach. Whether driven by fear of fire or the strength of belief, the camp remains safe. Later, the elder tells another story. His voice is gravelly, his words weighted with memory. He speaks of long ago, when a clan traveled without ochre, mocking its power. Spirits struck them with fever, with hunger, with loss. None survived. The listeners nod solemnly, their eyes fixed on the glowing wall. The story is not questioned, it is not entertainment, it is warning, carved in memory as surely as the handprints are carved in stone. The fire burns low, but the ochre remains bright. Children sleep with pigment smeared across their brows. Hunters rest with spears painted red. Mothers hold infants whose palms still glow from pressing the wall. The world outside is vast, full of claws and shadows, yet here, within the circle of fire and pigment, there is safety, there is belonging. And you, lying against the cold stone, understand more deeply than before. Ochre is not just color, it is the thread tying them to life, to each other, to memory itself. Without it, they would feel naked in the face of a merciless world. With it, they carry an armor that no spear can forge. The morning rises damp and heavy, clouds smothering the sky and muting the light into a dull gray wash. You wake to the low sound of coughing again, not one voice this time but several. In the corner of the shelter, 3 children huddle close to their mothers, eyes glassy, breaths shallow. A thin whimper cuts through the silence. Immediately, all hands reach for ochre. The healer kneels at once, mixing a thick paste with fat, coating her palms in red. She moves between the children, marking spirals on their chests, lines down their arms, dots on their foreheads. Her chant rises and falls, words older than memory, carrying the rhythm of waves and wind. The air is sharp with the tang of iron dust, heavy with fear. The mothers watch closely, whispering the same phrases under their breath, adding their own protection. The elder sprinkles ochre into the fire, sparks glowing briefly red before fading into smoke. The group holds its breath, waiting, as though the pigment itself will decide the children's fate. You know sickness can spread quickly here, unrelenting, yet to them it is not germs or infection. It is spirits, unseen and hungry, and ochre is the only shield. The ceremony stretches long into the morning. When it ends, the children sleep fitfully, pigment smeared thick across their small bodies. Their mothers relax slightly, though worry lingers in every line of their faces. The healer sits back exhausted, her hands trembling but still stained deep red. For her, there is no question. She has done what is needed. Whether the children live or die is no longer in her hands but in the pigments. The rest of the camp shifts uneasily into daily tasks. Hunters prepare to track game, though more reluctantly today. The air feels heavy, dangerous. The sickness among the children is seen as a sign that spirits are near, and stepping into the open bush without fresh protection would be foolish. So they paint themselves more carefully than usual, thickening the lines, layering new symbols. One hunter smears spirals across his arms, muttering that it will keep his strength. Another paints his spear shaft red from end to end, believing it will fly straighter. You join them as they trek inland, the sky still thick with cloud. The ochre glows faintly against their skin, like embers in the grey light. Their movements are cautious, eyes darting constantly. Every crack of brush, every flicker of shadow tightens their grips on spears. Hours pass before they find what they seek, a small herd of eland moving slowly across the ridge. The animals are huge, their hides glistening, their horns dangerous. The hunters crouch low, whispering, their ochre-painted faces tense. The plan forms quickly. Circle wide, drive them toward the gully, strike from both sides. The attack is swift, chaotic. Shouts erupt, stones clatter, spears fly. Dust fills the air as the aligned bolt, hooves thundering. One spear strikes deep, another glances off. The hunters chase, relentless. The herd scatters but one animal stumbles, blood streaming down its flank. The hunters close in, circling, finishing the kill with precise thrusts. The body is massive, blood steams in the cool air, the smell sharp and metallic. Almost at once, one hunter smears his hands in it, pressing bloody red marks across his chest. Others follow, mixing blood with ochre on their skin. Their chants are low, urgent, thanks to the animal, pleas to the spirits, declarations of power. To them this act ensures the eland's strength flows into their bodies, while its anger is soothed. The butchering begins. Stone blades flash, cutting hide, slicing meat, cracking bones. Fat is set aside carefully, marrow scooped from bones, tendons pulled for cordage. Ochre is mixed with fat again, stored in shells and bones. The hunters work with steady precision, their chants rising and falling like breath. To you it is grisly, to them, it is sacred. The trek back is slow under the weight of the carcass. Sweat streaks the ochre, turning it to mud on their skin, yet they walk proudly. They have brought not only food, but proof of their survival, of ochre's power. When the cliffs appear in the distance, relief spreads through the group. At the shelter, cheers rise. Children run forward, pressing small hands against the red and blood-streaked hunters. Women hurry to prepare fires, to strip hide, to divide meat. The air fills with the smell of roasting flesh, fat dripping into flames. Greasy smoke curls upward, clinging to the ochre-stained ceiling. The group feasts. Children laugh, their mouths greasy, faces smeared with pigment and food. Hunters tear meat with their teeth, grease shining on their painted bodies. Women hum as they share marrow, their hands red with both fat and dust. The fire roars, shadows dance, laughter mingles with chants. For a moment, fear loosens its grip. But as always, the night brings unease. The hyenas laugh nearby, closer than before. The people stiffen, gripping spears. The elder rises, his ochre-painted face glowing in the firelight. He lifts a pouch, sprinkles pigment into the flames. Sparks leap high, glowing red before fading. His chant begins, low and steady, building until the whole group joins. The sound fills the cave, pushing back the darkness, drowning out the predator's cries. Later, as the group quiets, the elder tells a story. He speaks of a time long ago when ochre was forgotten, and spirits swept through a camp, stealing voices, breaths, lives. His words are heavy, his voice rough, and the listeners nod solemnly. The story is not questioned, it is truth. The ochre must never be abandoned. The night grows long, the fire burns low, children sleep with pigment streaked across their brows, hunters rest with spears painted red. The air is thick with smoke, iron, grease. Outside, the world prowls, vast and merciless. But inside, within walls covered in handprints and lines, the people breathe easier. They have their shield. You lie back, staring at the glowing wall. Layers upon layers of prints stretch across the stone, glowing faintly in the firelight. They are not decoration, they are not idle, they are memory, protection, presence. Each hand says, I lived, I survived, I survived, I was shielded, and now you are too. The realization settles heavy in your chest. Ochre is not just pigment, it is belief solidified into ritual, ritual solidified into survival. In a world of sickness and predators, of hunger and storms, it is the one thing they can control, and in that control they find strength. Tomorrow, the sickness may claim the children. Tomorrow, the hunters may fall to lions. Tomorrow, the storm may sweep the shelter into the sea. But tonight, their bodies glow red in firelight, their chants weave like walls, and the ochre binds them together. That is enough. And as you close your eyes, the final sound you hear is the steady scrape of stone against stone, the endless rhythm of grinding pigment, the heartbeat of survival itself. The first sound you hear at dawn is the restless shifting of bodies on the stone floor, a murmur of voices rising like the sea's tide. The cave is dim, lit only by a few stubborn embers still glowing in the hearth. Smoke hangs thick in the air, pressing low against the ochre-marked ceiling. Someone coughs, someone else whispers a prayer under their breath, clutching a pouch of pigment like a charm. You rub your eyes, and once again you're struck by how the red dust never leaves. It is on every surface, every tool, every face. The group is uneasy this morning. The sickness among the children has not vanished, though they still breathe. Their coughs are deeper, their eyes heavier. Their mothers smear more pigment across their foreheads, whispering fiercely to the spirits that hover unseen. Fear lingers in the air like the smoke, heavier than the dawn chill. The hunters glance nervously toward the cave mouth as if stepping outside will invite misfortune. The elder senses this mood and acts swiftly. He signals for silence, then crouches near the fire. His hands are already coated in red paste, thick and dark from fat. He presses both palms against the floor beside the fire, holding them there until the pigment smears outward in a bold stain. He looks up, eyes sharp, and nods. The people understand. A new rite must be performed before they dare leave. Everyone gathers near the back wall. The air hums with anticipation. Children are carried forward, their hands dipped in ochre, then pressed to the stone. Their faint prints overlap the many layers already there. Mothers follow, then hunters, then even the sick, each person contributing to the growing barrier of red. Some draw spirals, some mark lines, some leave only hands. Each mark is an oath. We are here, we are guarded, we will endure. When it is done, the wall gleams in the firelight, a forest of crimson shapes. The group exhales together as though a weight has lifted. The elder sprinkles pigment into the flames, and sparks leap like fireflies. The chants begin low, steady, rising until the cave vibrates with sound. The children calm, their coughing quieter, their breathing steadier. Whether by chance or belief, the spirits seem held at bay. By midday the camp divides into tasks. Hunters prepare to seek game inland, though their movements are slower, their expressions wary. Women gather baskets, heading toward the tide pools with children at their heels. The elder remains behind, watching over the sick, tending the fire, grinding more pigment with patient hands. You follow the women to the shoreline. The tide is low, exposing rocks, slick with seaweed, pools teeming with shellfish. They move with practiced ease, prying limpets from stones, scooping mussels, spearing small fish with sharpened sticks. The children laugh, chasing crabs, shrieking when pinched. Even here, far from the cave, the pigment is present, swirls painted on forearms, dots across brows. A woman dips her fingers into the tide pool, then presses them to her ochre-painted face, mingling salt water with earth, as if blending two powers together. Back at camp, the hunters return empty-handed. The herds have moved, tracks leading farther inland than they can safely travel today. They shrug, though disappointment is clear. Instead, they spend the afternoon mending tools. Spears are sharpened, nets rewoven, stone blades refitted into shafts, and always, ochre is added, smeared onto bindings, painted across handles, rubbed into stone tips. To them, no tool is complete without it. As the sun dips low, the camp prepares for evening ritual. The elder calls them close, his voice deep and steady. He mixes fresh paste, this time blending ochre with ash from the fire. He smears it across his chest in broad lines, then passes the mixture around. One by one the others follow, painting themselves with symbols meant not only to protect but to cleanse, a barrier against sickness, against hunger, against fear itself. The chants rise again, louder now, echoing into the dusk. The fire roars, sparks flying. Shadows leap across the cave walls, twisting among the red marks, making them seem alive. Children stamp their feet in rhythm, their laughter mingling with the chants. Hunters slap their spears against the ground. Women clap, voices merge until the cave feels like a heartbeat. And then, silence. The fire crackles. The group breathes as one. For a moment, you feel the weight of millennia press down, the sheer persistence of life held together by dust, by ritual, by belief. The night deepens. Outside, predators roam. You hear the cough of a leopard, the distant cry of hyenas. The people tense, but they do not panic. They smear more pigment across their brows, press more handprints on the walls. They trust the shield they have built. Later, as the fire burns low, the elder tells another story. His voice is rough, his words slow. He speaks of a time when the world was darker, when spirits walked openly, stealing children, devouring hunters. He says that ochre was a gift from the earth, a weapon given to humans, so they could fight back. His listeners nod, eyes wide, their bodies glowing red in the embers. The story is not doubted, it is truth carved into their lives as deeply as the handprints carved into stone. The group sleeps, their faces painted, their bodies glowing faintly in the firelight. Children rest against their mothers, hunters curl around their spears, the sick breathe more steadily. Outside, the world prowls, vast and merciless, but inside, within the circle of pigment and flame, they are safe. You lie back, staring at the wall of red marks. Each one is a voice, a memory, a promise. They are not simply decoration, they are survival itself. And as your eyes close, you realize once more, this dust, this simple earth, has carried humanity through darkness. It is armor, it is language, it is hope. Tomorrow may bring sickness, tomorrow may bring predators, tomorrow may bring hunger, but tonight, with ochre on their skin and chants in their throats, they will The fire has nearly gone out when the first stirrings of dawn creep into the shelter. Pale light filters through the cave mouth, brushing across sleeping bodies, picking out streaks of red pigment that glow faintly even in shadow. You shift against the cold stone, listening to the familiar morning sounds, the scrape of stone against stone, the cough of smoke-filled lungs, the low hum of voices carrying fragments of chant.
Already.
The day begins with pigment. A woman kneels by the hearth, grinding a fresh lump of ochre against a flat slab, her arms steady, her breath matching the rhythm of the stone. Dust drifts into a carved shell, mingling with fat saved from last night's roasting. She stirs slowly, carefully, until the mixture gleams. The smell of iron and smoke thickens in the air, and one by one, people gather to mark themselves. Each gesture is deliberate. A hunter smears bold lines down his arms, whispering that they will steady his spear. A mother draws dots across her child's brow, muttering that the spirits will be confused by the pattern. An elder paints a spiral across his chest, calling it the sun that will keep his heart warm. You realize how profoundly this pigment has become their second skin. To step outside without it would feel as reckless as you walking barefoot across shards of glass. The children who had coughed so hard in the night are quieter now, their small bodies glowing with thick red spirals painted by the healer. Their mothers remain cautious, hovering near, but the pigment has given them peace for the moment. It is not cure, but it is comfort, and sometimes comfort is survival. The hunters gather their spears, preparing to trek inland once more. They need hides as much as meat. The nights grow colder, and more coverings are necessary. The camp watches as they mark themselves heavily, paint thick on faces and limbs. The elder blesses each spear, smearing pigment across the stone tips, chanting low. Only then do they leave, shadows slipping into the pale morning light. You follow them across the scrubland. The air is sharp, filled with the hum of insects. Tracks appear quickly in the damp soil. Springbok, kudu, hyena, each mark is studied, whispered over, debated. The ochre on their bodies seems to pulse as they crouch, as though it sharpens their focus, binds them together. Hours pass before they find what they seek. A herd of springbok, grazing nervously near a ridge. The hunters fan out, moving like shadows. One crouches low, smearing fresh pigment from his pouch across his forehead. Another mutters words to the spirits, tightening his grip on his spear. At the signal, a sharp bird call, they surge forward. Shouts rise, stones clatter, dust billows, the herd scatters, hooves drumming against the earth. Spears fly, one springbok stumbles, pierced deep, collapsing in the dirt. The hunters close in swiftly, ending it with practiced precision. The ritual begins at once. Blood steams in the cool air, and the hunters dip their fingers into it, smearing it over ochre-painted skin. They whisper thanks, calling the animal's spirit to join theirs, to lend strength rather than vengeance. One presses a handprint, wet with both blood and pigment, onto the animal's flank. The others nod gravely. The kill is not just food, it is an exchange, sealed in red. They butcher quickly, slicing hide, cutting meat, cracking bones for marrow. Every motion is efficient, purposeful. Fat is set aside carefully, to be mixed later with more ochre. The carcass is heavy, but they shoulder the load without complaint, their bodies glowing red in the sun. The trek back is long, but their chants rise softly as they walk, weaving strength into tired limbs. When they return, the camp erupts with relief. Children run forward, hands outstretched to touch the red-streaked hunters. Women hurry to prepare fires, to strip hide, to divide meat. The air soon fills with the smell of roasting flesh, fat dripping into flames, smoke curling thick and greasy. Laughter rises again. Children chase each other around the fire, their faces painted into crew masks. Women tear strips of meat, greasy hands leaving pigment stains on hides. Hunters drink marrow from cracked bones, streaking their chests with it until they shine like living embers. But the joy is tempered. As the sun sinks, the elder calls for silence. He speaks of the spirits that had brought sickness, of the shadows that haunt the bush. He warns that protection must be renewed every night, lest the spirits slip through cracks left unguarded. The group listens solemnly, nodding, eyes fixed on the red glow of the fire. The ritual begins. Ochre is ground fresh, mixed with marrow fat until it gleams dark and wet. The paste is passed around, and each person paints anew. Spirals across chests, lines down arms, dots across brows. Infants are marked, the sick covered, even tools painted with streaks. Then the chanting begins, low and steady, building with each repetition. Feet stamp, hands clap, voices merge. The cave walls echo with sound. the red handprints seeming to move in the flickering firelight. The chanting lasts deep into the night. Outside, the predators call, hyenas laugh, leopards cough, lions roar faintly in the distance, but the group does not cower. Their voices rise louder, their painted bodies glowing in firelight. The spirits may circle, but they will not enter, not while the ochre burns. Later the elder tells another story. His voice is gravelly, his words slow, deliberate. He speaks of ancestors long ago who traveled far without pigment, mocking its power. Spirits descended on them, stealing their voices, their breath, their lives. Only one returned, marked with ochre from head to toe. The listeners shiver, nodding gravely. The story is not doubted. It is truth, carved into memory as surely as the pigment is carved into stone. The fire burns low, but the ochre remains bright. Children sleep with spirals across their brows. Hunters rest with spears painted red. Mothers curl around infants glowing faintly in the embers. The world outside prowls, vast and merciless. Yet here, within the walls of red and flame, there is safety. You lie back, staring at the glowing handprints layered across the cave. They are not simply marks. They are voices, memories, shields. Each one says, I lived, I survived, I endured, and now you are part of them. You move your hand across the cooled ash beside the hearth, and when you lift your fingers, the red dust clinging there feels like a hinge between worlds. The fire's glow shimmers, and with a blink the cave around you folds forward in time. The orange light hardens into clean white strips. The smell of wood smoke becomes alcohol wipes and damp sediment, and the low hum you've been hearing resolves into the steady purr of a lab's fume hood. You are still kneeling, but now your knees press into tarpaulin instead of packed earth. The same red dust lies under your nails, only today it sits in labeled trays, tagged, bagged, and caught beneath magnifying lenses that bend each grain into a star. You are here to listen as the future reads the past aloud. You stand among flats of artifacts that look like a coastline of small sunsets. Flattened ochre nodules faceted by grinding, hammerstones nicked where pigment was cracked open, grindstones with red lodged in their pores like embers caught in pumice. A magnifier lamp throws a pale halo over a shell bead. The bead's drill hole is worn silky by a cord long vanished, and along its inner lip, a faint blush of iron says it spent a life brushing painted skin. Your ASMR brain kicks in. Soft brush, tiny scraper, the agreeable crunch of silt, and somewhere behind the machines the old camp's rhythm still flickers. The hush before a chant, a bone spoon stirring paste, feet tapping lightly in time. Start where the coast breathes cold. South along Africa's rim the cliffs open to names you've heard like a litany. Blombos, Still Bay, Clazy's River, Pinnacle Point. In trays from those caves you meet whole kits that look like field kitchens for color. A pallet stone worn shallow like a saucer, grinder with a red oval polished into it. A hollowed bone that once held paste made of iron, earth and animal fat. A smoothed quartzite pebble pitted with faint pockets where nodules were crushed. It is not one lucky smear here or there, it is habit, recipe, repetition. If archaeology were a courtroom, this would be the part where the jury leans forward. At Blombos, the ochre arrives like a manifesto. A small nodule bears cross-hatched lines, deliberate geometry incised into red quiet, proof that minds, not wind, made the marks. Nearby lies a famed set, grindstone, hammerstone, bone spatula, all filmed with pigment, as if the last mixer stepped away for a sip of water and never returned. You can practically feel the circular pull of wrist and shoulder mixing paste. Remember the elder by your hearth stirring fat and dust together until the streak gleamed. Same motion, same goal, make the world stick to meaning. Also yes, you are watching history invent cosmetics and spiritual armor at the same table, 2 for 1. A few trays over, shell beads tell their small persuasive story. Their edges blush red exactly where they would rub against a neck, a collarbone, the hollow of a throat. That stain did not fall from a ceiling, it lived on skin. Beads confirm what your nights in the shelter already taught you. Color travels with bodies. Belief moves when people move. You can almost see a young woman laughing as a necklace clicks against a spiral painted over her heart. If you just smiled, that's normal. Some proofs arrive like warmth. Up the coast, and slightly inland, you climb an elevator of epochs to Pinnacle Point. Here the red story shakes hands with engineering. In hearth edges, bits of silkrete went hot and glassy before being flaked into points. Under a microscope their skins shine with heat and the ash around them carries flecks of red scrape during use. Notes stack up, nodules scuffed smooth by handling, grinding swept into fires, small piles of pigment where people sat and worked. You think of hunters rubbing paste down spear shafts before a drive and can't resist the joke. Sure, it's ritual, but it's also excellent product design. If only the marketing department had a shell phone. On a quieter table lies a humble pebble incised with parallel grooves, each groove still full of red, so deep that time could not rinse it out. A pocket mill, a personal dispenser of courage. If you have ever kept lip balm in every bag, you understand this tool down to the wrist bones. It says, don't run out. The day will ask for color. You travel north in both hallway and imagination, following river valleys where sediments hold faces and gestures. The trays change tone when burials arrive, labels grow exact, paper softens under fingers, and light gentles its edge. In these boxes the red turns ceremonial in a way that lands in your ribs. Skeletons lie with stains pooled at the head and chest, dust nested in cupped hands, pigment blooming beneath ribs, like a second memory of breath. One set rests with deer antler laid by the skull. The base is heavy with iron, as if the crown was once lowered into color before being placed. The sight is simple and devastating. It's our shelter again, except the sleeper won't wake and the community won't let darkness have them undefended. Field drawings pinned nearby show ovals of soil. Here the ochre thin as a veil, there thick like a spill of dawn. Archaeologists use careful phrases, as they should. You translate them into camp speech. We added a layer, we helped them cross. The impulse matches what you watched during long nights. The healer leaning over a child, mothers dotting brows, the elder sprinkling sparks. Belief moves across hours, ritual stretches across lives. From Africa you step into Eurasia's long corridor where the red bloom keeps reappearing like wildflowers after rain. A drawer labeled Sungir offers thousands of ivory beads, pierced, polished, arranged on the dead in strings you can still map. Bands across chests, clouds at hips, cuffs at wrists. The soil was thick with ochre here, even the memory of color glows. Two children were laid side by side with spears, pendants, ornaments, lavish care, a river of work braided into a single goodbye. You swallow because sorrow has a way of being expertly documented and still stopping your voice. Travel west and the drawers take the names of weather, Dolny Vistainice, Kostanki, La Feresi. A mammoth bone hut shows stains where pigment pooled along a post as if someone painted the doorway and stepped through. A fired clay figure keeps in a fine crack, a blush of iron that might once have warmed its surface. A tag on a bag of fragments reads residue Fe oxide, which is lab for someone's thumb was red that day. In another tray, a Neanderthal kit sits with quiet density scrapers, points and a chunk of mineral wearing a brick red grin, where it was ground. Scholars debate why your robust cousins loved the dust better. Hide processing, tougher glue, skin signal, some of each. The piece itself doesn't argue, it just shines. Carried, altered, used. You angle east and south again. In India's rock shelters at Bhimbetka, panels of dancers and animals stretch across stone, some repainted over centuries, some ghosting away as rain takes its interest. A conservation tag beside a pigment nodule reads, Source C 5 kilometers from shelter. Read that again with your feet. Someone carried color at the expense of calories. Road trip for red. Priorities tell you who a community is. Cross one more C in a single museum stride. Curators are generous like that, and you reach a photograph of a dry lake in Australia where burials older than your sense of old were found dusted with ochre. Lake Mungo yields bones and a blush that says, we've always sent our dead into light. On another panel, the Northern Territory's ochre paintings glow in hues local to each clan, yellow from one outcrop, deep red from another, maps of story and lore bound to stone by the same earth you've been handling with tweezers all morning. Your inner voice, which has been patient for hours, finally whispers, of course the palette is a passport. In the lab's far corner, a microscope leans over a slide where grains look like galaxies. A conservator invites you to peer. Under magnification, hematite flashes like crushed sunset. Goethite pales to yellow, magnetite hangs dark as a moonless patch of sea. A needle plucks a fleck and drops it into a vial. The mass spec chatters and prints a mountain range of peaks. Iron, yes, but also trace elements, little chemical signatures that let you match a stain on a bead to a quarry miles away. Trade routes bloom from a handful of dust. If you felt the tiny thrill of detective fiction there, welcome. Microscopes and noir with better lighting. A technician slides over residues, shaved from stone points. Under the scope, a film hugs the tang, plant gum and beeswax thickened with powdered stone, and there it is, ochre, Heat that blend near a fire, and it flows just enough to set, cool it, and it grips like new bone. People weren't only believing in red, they were engineering with it. Add a pinch and the whole recipe sings. You may now picture a Pleistocene chef saying, "It binds better with a touch of color," and yes, you are allowed to grin. On a steel trolley sit bags of ash, from hearths quenched before cities learned their names. The ash is sieved, the charcoal is dated, the story builds in brackets and ranges. When the printout lands, the room grows quiet, the way a shelter does before song. Dates reach so deep you feel your breath shorten. The pigment story is not a flourish, added at the end of hunter-gatherer life, it is one of the roots. Remember the storm night, when hands made a red wall to hold the dark outside. Multiply that by millennia, the data agrees with the memory you've been living. Evidence keeps piling into your lap like kindling. A grinder from North Africa holds a central hollow polished to a shine a shell would envy. A Levantine pendant shows, in its drilled hole, a red ring no wild process paints by accident. In Iberia, folded bark boats, smeared with pigment, turn up like portable pallets. Ritual to go, pocket pallet, pouch pallet. The cosmetics aisle has nothing on a good foraging kit. You lean over cobbles incised with neat, repeating notches. Some call them nothing, some call them counting, some call them the world's first don't forget list. Nobody disputes the red fixed deep in the grooves. The marks look bandaged, as if meaning needed a sealant. Picture the elder by your fire tapping each cut to keep a beat while the storm growled, chalky rhythm, red assurance. Sometimes art is a machine for remembering together. In one corner, a poster shows a European burial, a shallow oval, a body curled, ochre pooled at hips and shoulders, a bundle of tools by the hands. The caption picks cautious verbs, as good captions must. You translate again to camp speech. We did everything we could. The conversion is not disrespect, it's fidelity to the human scale. You remember pressing a spiral onto a sleeping infant's chest, and realize you have been performing the same sentence in two dialects, field note and lullaby. Pause, notice your breathing slowing without permission. The objects are changing your pace. Patterns you cannot unsee cohere in the trays. When there is danger, people add a layer. When there is loss, people add a layer. When there is hope, people add a layer. Paste works the way stories do. It thickens the air against the teeth of the night. If your editing brain is counting jokes, we promised light jokes. After all, let it relax. Humans have been writing the punchline for 60,000 years. Protection looks good on you. A small exhibit within the lab invites touch. Replicas you can handle without gloves. You pick up a grinder, weight sits perfect in your palm. Draw a nodule across it, and feel grit collapse into velvet. Mix powder with fat from a tiny cup and your finger, all on its own, traces a spiral on your wrist. You laugh quietly at the muscle memory you didn't know you had. Practice travels better than luggage. At the end of the bench, a glass case holds modest treasures, a shoulder blade, etched with lines that still hold red, a palm-sized stone scratched into a triangle, then rubbed to make the symbol blaze, a lump rounded by years of pockets and hands. The card beneath lists units, layers, depth. Your head lists memories, the elder lending courage to a boy with a single stroke, mothers marking infants, a ring of feet stamping time, hands lifted to a wall until a cave glowed like a banked fire. The distance between evidence and experience shrinks to the width of a thumb. Step back and the map widens. The pigment's passport stamps run from coast to forest, desert to periglacial plain. It travels by foot and rumor and promise, traded with shells and stories, prioritized even when bellies are thin. People walk for water, people walk for stone, people also walk for red. That priority tells you something fundamental. The tool role of survival has always included objects you cannot eat, color, song, shape, touch, because fear is not only in the stomach, it is in the air, and the air needs thickening. The lab gives doubts a chair too, and you let them sit. Not every stain means magic. Red grit helps soften hides, dries damp, resists bugs. It toughens glue, and yes, can block sun. You remember calling it sunscreen by the shore, and award yourself a point for predictive accuracy. But then the burials step into the room again, and the necklaces, and the repeated handprints, and the abstract marks that recur across layers and continents, and you feel the scale tip toward a mixed truth, useful and meaningful, practical and numinous, both at once in the same smear. Humans are absolute virtuosos at holding two kinds of reason in one hand. A researcher wheels over a surprise, a cast of a child's handprint. It is small, deep time ordinary, and almost too moving to hold. In the center of the palm a swirl shows where paste pooled before the slap. Someone had just dipped into a bowl. You can see the little inhale, the cool tickle of fat and dust, the solemn hush, or the giggle, the smack, the delighted gasp at the mark. The print looks exactly like the ones you pressed in our Storm Bright section, and the match ties a quiet knot at the base of your throat. If you needed proof that bedtime and deep time are neighbors, here it is. Before you leave, you stand under photographs of cliffs you have now visited twice, once with hunters, once with curators. The sea is still there, wind still threads salt into cave mouths, red veins still shine on rock after rain. Somewhere a hyena is laughing, somewhere a mother is touching a sleeping brow with a fingertip of color. The lab hums along, machines agreeing with memory, one peak, one date, one micrograph at a time. You are inside a chorus bigger than any century, any passport, any language you carry. So you pack the evidence the way your people packed pigment, on the skin of your thoughts, in the folds of your breath. The list has lodged in you, grinders hollowed to silk, bowls filled with iron beads blushed by wear, shells smudged where cord met color, burials that bloom at the chest, hearths with ash gone brick red, and the list is saying something less smug than we were clever. Though yes, we were. It says we were together. We made a thing that let us put our backs to each other while the night prowled. We made a layer. At the door a conservator offers a teaching card with a dot of safe practice pigment at the corner. It's sweet, almost funny, until you rub the stain with your thumb and feel your shoulders drop. Your breath deepens, your ribs travel farther on the exhale. Old rule, still working. Paint, and your courage stops sloshing out of you. Paint, and the world grows a membrane. Paint, and all your little selves across time line up and nod. If only insurance companies covered ochre, someday. Step back through the hinge, LEDs soften to firelight, benches fold into bedrolls, the fume hood becomes the wind at the cave mouth. You are home in the shelter again, though here home means something older than speech, people within arm's reach, smoke in hair, red in every crease. The artifacts you studied are back where they started, on bodies and walls and tools, in chants and hunts, and farewells. The dust on your thumb is the same dust you lifted when this section began, only now it carries a few more names, a handful of dates, and the ache of children you never met, but somehow remember. You sit by the fire and watch an infant sleeping with a faint spiral drying on the chest. You remember the cross-hatched nodule, the shell necklace reddened by years of brushing skin, the dry lake where mourners let ochre fall like dawn. You remember how many continents kept arriving with the same answer. The quiet humor returns, you a bedtime archaeologist, hoarding calm like beads, and you let yourself smile. Outside spirits do as spirits do, inside, people do what people do. They add a layer. When the elder glances over you nod, he nods back. No other treaty is required. Behind him the wall gleams with overlapping hands, fresh upon fossil, upon memory. What a textbook might call a palimpsest and the camp calls safety. You close your eyes and hear grinders starting somewhere, even if only in tomorrow's morning. The story the lab just told you, and that the shelter keeps acting out, wants one line you can carry like a bead under your shirt. In every age that wants a dawn, you rise early, make red, and draw a boundary the dark must not cross. The fire in the shelter is low when you wake, a faint orange core surrounded by white ash. Thin trails of smoke twist upward into the blackened ceiling, clinging to the red smears left there by years of fingertips pressing pigment into stone. You cough, eyes stinging, but no one else stirs. Bodies are still sprawled across hides and mats of rushes, breaths rising and falling in uneven chorus. It is the hush before another day of work, fear, hunger, and survival, and yet even in sleep, every forehead, every arm, every cheek is painted. The ochre never rests. Slowly the camp begins to rouse. The child whimpers, then giggles when her mother brushes her cheek with a finger dipped in the still sticky bowl of pigment. A hunter stretches his arms wide, the dried ochre cracking across his chest like a second skin. The healer hums as she grinds more paste, shoulders moving in rhythm, the scrape of stone on stone echoing steady as a heartbeat. Morning doesn't truly begin until pigment is prepared, until the protective layer is renewed. Without it, no one dares step outside. The sickness that has hovered in the camp lingers. The children still cough, thin and rattling though they manage weak smiles when marked with fresh spirals. Mothers hold them close, whispering charms as they press more red paste across brows and chests. To your modern mind it looks like makeup or paint, but to them it is shield, medicine, prayer. They do not separate those words, they are all one. Today is different. The hunters have decided to travel far, far farther inland than they have dared for weeks. The nearer ridges are stripped, the game scattered. If the group does not risk a longer hunt, hunger will return sharp and unforgiving. Preparation begins. Immediately, spears are inspected, bindings retightened with sinew, stone points rechipped until sharp enough to split hide. Nets are patched, ropes twisted from plant fibers, baskets are readied for carrying meat back to camp. But none of this is complete until the pigment is applied. The ritual is solemn. The elder kneels by the hearth mixing fresh ochre paste with animal fat and marrow. He stirs slowly, deliberately, then raises the shell bowl high. One by one the hunters kneel before him, and he paints them, spirals on chests, circles on brows, lines down arms and legs. Each stroke is accompanied by murmured words: strength, speed, silence, safety. The hunters accept these marks with bowed heads. Only when fully painted do they rise, grip their weapons, and prepare to leave. The journey is long, the air thick with insects, the ground littered with stones that cut at bare feet. Hours pass in silence, broken only by bird calls and the occasional grunt as someone slips. The ochre streaks on their bodies glisten with sweat, turning dark and muddy, but no one wipes them away. To touch them would be to weaken the barrier. They let the sweat carry the dust into their pores, deeper into their skin, until they are saturated with it. At last they find what they seek, a herd of wildebeest grazing on the open plain. The animals are larger, more dangerous than springbok or kudu, but also far richer in meat and hide. The hunters crouch low, hearts pounding. They paint fresh marks on their spears, whispering charms into the shafts. Then they spread out, circling slowly, carefully, until the herd is hemmed in. The attack is sudden, violent. Shouts split the air, stones clatter, spears whistle. The herd surges, hooves thundering like drums. Dust rises in choking clouds. Hunters race, weaving, thrusting, dodging. One wildebeest collapses, spears lodged deep in its chest. Another kicks wildly, nearly goring a hunter, but he rolls free, his ochre-streaked body flashing as he rises again. At last, 2 animals fall. The herd scatters, leaving the hunters panting, trembling, but triumphant. The ritual of blood begins instantly. Hunters smear hands in the steaming wounds, pressing bloody palm prints over the ochre already painted on their bodies. They chant low, urgent, binding the animal's spirit to theirs, claiming its strength while soothing its rage. One man presses his bloody hand onto his companion's chest, marking him with the kill's power. The others follow, red upon red, dust upon blood, earth and life fused. But the hunt is not over. The carcasses must be butchered quickly before predators arrive. Blades flash, hide peels, meat is stripped, bones cracked for marrow. The air fills with the metallic tang of blood, the greasy smoke of fat. Flies swarm, but the hunters work without pause, their chants rising and falling to steady their hands. The carcasses shrink under their knives, reduced to neat bundles of meat, hide, sinew, bone. Nothing is wasted. Even the blood pooled in the dirt is smeared onto spears and faces. The trek back is punishing. Each hunter staggers beneath heavy loads, baskets filled with meat, hides slung over shoulders, marrow bones strapped to backs. Sweat pours, ochre streaks blur, but the chants do not stop. Their voices weave together like rope, pulling them forward step after step. The red stains on their bodies gleam even in exhaustion, reminders of the barrier they carry with them. When they reach the shelter, the camp erupts in relief. Children run forward, pressing their hands to the hunters' red and blood-streaked bodies. Women cheer, rushing to help carry loads. Fires are lit quickly, spits prepared, hides stretched for drying. The air fills with the smell of roasting meat, thick and rich. Grease drips into flames, crackling. Smoke curls upward, clinging to ochre-painted walls. Laughter returns, mingling with hunger's sharp cries. The feast is joyous, but disciplined. Meat is divided, marrow shared, fat set aside for pigment mixing. Hunters tear flesh with their teeth, grease shining on ochre-streaked faces. Women chew slowly, savoring each bite. Children laugh, mouths smeared red and shiny. The elder takes the first taste, then sprinkles pigment into the fire. Sparks leap high, glowing red, as chants rise once more. But night brings unease. Beyond the firelight, hyenas laugh, lions cough, jackals howl. Shadows flicker in the scrub. The people stiffen, gripping spears, pulling children close. The elder rises, lifts his arms painted red, and chants loudly. The others join, voices weaving into a wall of sound. The ochre on their bodies glows in the firelight, making them look like embers. The predators circle but do not approach, whether it is fire, noise, or pigment that keeps them away. The people believe it is ochre. Later, when the camp grows quiet, the elder tells a story. His voice is low, gravelly, carrying through the smoke. He speaks of the first hunt, when the ancestors killed without pigment, and the spirits took their strength in vengeance. He tells how the survivors smeared themselves with earth and blood, and only then did the spirits relent. The listeners nod, eyes wide, their faces glowing red in the firelight. The story is not doubted, it is truth. The fire burns low, but the ochre remains bright. Children sleep with spirals across their brows. Hunters rest with spears painted red. Mothers hold infants, whose palms still glow faintly from pressing against the cave wall. The world outside prowls vast and merciless, but inside, within the circle of pigment and flame, there is safety. You lie back against the stone, staring at the handprints layered across the wall, fresh upon faded, one generation upon another, all glowing faintly in the firelight. They are not decoration, they are memory, protection, belonging. Each print says, "I was here, I lived, I survived." You close your eyes, breathing in the iron tang of ochre and smoke, and know you are part of them now. Tomorrow, hunger will return. Tomorrow, sickness may claim another child. Tomorrow, predators may circle closer. But tonight, the people rest in red, their bodies painted, their spirits guarded, and you rest with them, safe for another night inside the fortress of ochre. The dawn begins as a hush rather than a blaze. Clouds smother the horizon, dulling the sun to a pale smear, and mist creeps into the shelter like a cautious animal. You wake with the others, bones stiff from the cold stone, ears filled with the small chorus of coughs, yawns, and whispered breaths. The fire is little more than glowing coals now, and someone is already feeding it thin sticks, coaxing smoke upward into the soot-black ceiling. The smoke clings to your throat, earthy, sharp but the smell is familiar, almost comforting, like the iron tang of the pigment that still stains your own hands. The elder stirs, slow but steady. He reaches for a lump of ochre, resting in a cracked shell, and begins grinding, the scrape of stone on stone echoing softly. The sound is the morning bell of this world. The people gather gradually, children rubbing their eyes, hunters stretching sore muscles, mothers cradling infants against painted breasts. One by one they step forward, dip fingers into the fresh paste, and mark themselves anew. Spirals across the chest, lines down arms, dots across brows. The act is ordinary, unremarkable, yet it binds the group as tightly as sinew binds a spear point. The children who had coughed through the night are weaker, their eyes glassy, but they smile faintly when the healer paints thick spirals across their ribs. Their mothers hold them close, rocking gently, whispering charms. The pigment glows wetly, as if it has power of its own. You can't help but wonder, perhaps the ochre does not drive spirits away, but it gives the living courage to fight harder, to endure one more day, and in a world like this, belief itself can be medicine. Today is not for hunting. The camp has meat enough for now, hides drying in the smoky air. Instead, today is for building, for remembering, for teaching. The young ones are led to the wall at the back of the shelter. They laugh nervously as the elder dips their small hands into a bowl of red paste and presses them onto the stone. Fresh handprints bloom beside faded ones, a living tapestry that grows thicker each season. Each print is a declaration. I am here, I belong, I am protected. The elder hums softly as he works, and the children mimic him, their voices thin but steady. Later the hunters gather to repair their weapons. Spears are sharpened with stone flakes, bindings retied with sinew, shafts rubbed smooth with ochre paste. The pigment seeps into the wood, staining it permanently. To you it looks like decoration, to them it is armor. A spear without ochre is not a spear, it is only wood and stone, vulnerable, unfinished. Meanwhile women tend to the fire, roasting roots and shellfish gathered from the tide. Children chase one another outside, their painted faces grinning, their laughter echoing against the cliffs. The healer prepares more pigment, this time mixing it not with fat but with ash, creating a thinner paste. She smears it across the doorway of the shelter, marking it as sacred ground. Spirits may wander, predators may circle, storms may strike, but this space, this hearth, these walls, these people, is claimed by rest. As the day wears on, stories begin. The elder speaks of long-ago hunts, of storms survived, of sicknesses endured. He points to the wall of handprints, tracing lines between them, telling how each mark belongs to someone. a child grown to hunter, a mother gone to the earth, an elder who once led. The children listen wide-eyed, tracing their own fresh prints with trembling fingers. They understand, even without words, to leave a hand here is to become part of something larger, something that stretches beyond death. By afternoon, the camp turns to ritual. The hunters paint themselves thickly, even though they do not leave. The mothers paint their children. The elder paints the cave walls with spirals, lines and shapes whose meanings are felt more than spoken. The chants rise, low, steady, resonant. Feet stamp, hands clap, voices weave together. The air grows hot with breath and smoke. The ochre on bodies glistens in the firelight, turning each person into a living ember. The ritual is for protection, yes, but also for remembrance. They chant of ancestors who faced storms, of spirits that were driven away, of hunts that brought meat. The cave vibrates with sound, with memory, with belief. For a moment time folds and you feel the weight of tens of thousands of years pressing down, generations repeating the same gestures, singing the same words, smearing the same dust across their bodies. Night falls, the fire blazes high, the chants fade into murmurs, then into silence. Outside, predators call, the laugh of hyenas, the cough of leopards, the roar of lions. The people stiffen, but they do not panic. They smear fresh pigment on their brows, press more handprints onto the walls, whisper charms into the flames. The predators circle, but they do not enter, whether it is fire, noise, or belief that keeps them away. The people know it is Ochre. Later, the elder tells his final story of the night. His voice is gravelly, his words slow, heavy with memory. He speaks of the first time Ochre was given, a gift from the earth to humans, so they would not be alone in the dark. He tells how the red dust is the blood of the world itself, and when humans wear it, they are bound to the earth, shielded from what lurks beyond. The listeners nod gravely, their painted faces glowing in the firelight. The story is not doubted, it is truth. The fire burns low, children sleep with spirals across their brows, hunters rest with spears painted red, mothers cradle infants glowing faintly in the embers. The elder leans back, eyes half closed, his hands still stained with pigment. The healer hums softly, rocking a coughing child. Outside, the world prowls, vast and merciless, but inside, within the circle of pigment and flame, there is peace. You lie back against the cold stone, staring at the handprints, layered across the wall, fresh upon faded, one generation upon another, glowing faintly in the dying firelight. They are not decoration, they are memory, they are protection, they are belonging. Each print whispers, I lived, I survived, I am part of this. Your eyelids grow heavy, the smell of ochre, of smoke, of grease fills your nose, your chest rises and falls in rhythm with the sleepers around you. You feel the weight of belief pressing down, comforting, steady. Tomorrow hunger will return, tomorrow sickness may claim another child.